Life is grace. Welcome to Breakthrough, a safe place for you to see, to hear, understand. Uplifting, inspiring God's stories that can help you overcome whatever life throws at you, that can help transform, influence, and greatly impact your life. Today we'll share with you such a powerful, powerful story of grace, one that will surely resonate in the very core of your heart and soul because of the very nature of why such grace was extended and given. So are you ready? If you are, let's jump in. So what really is grace? Grace is defined as something granted, provided, given, bestowed, gifted, handed over, presented to someone that's undeserving and unmerited. One time I was at the airport waiting for my flight, and I noticed a man who looked pretty much like the actor Danny DeVito. I don't know if you know the guy, but he played the Penguin in one of the Batman's movies. I think it was sometime early 1990s. And I noticed him particularly as he was so busy moving back and forth, pacing himself endlessly. And as he stops, he would then move his body left to right, then forward, backward, nonstop. And somehow, I sense a developmental disability. But I just let him be. Then boarding time came, and I found myself seated directly at the back of this guy by the window seat. Then we were on our way. As the plane took off, he was still actually moving on his seat beside his elderly companion. And since the flight was just a short one, what was served was a glass of orange juice or water, whichever one you'd like to choose. And however, for those who are hungry and would like something more, the attendants began offering sandwiches and bottled fruit drinks. But of course, for a price. You have to pay. And when the guy in front of me saw this, he began waving to the attendant, signaling that he wanted what she was holding, a big bottle of orange juice and 2 sandwiches. Now, the attendant, sensing the condition of the man, she excused herself, saying, "Wait, give me a second. I will be back for you." In less than a minute, the attendant was back with a bag, and she handed it to him. She said, "Here's your bag of goodies. There's your orange juice inside, your ham and chicken sandwiches, and we added some cookies. And the captain says it's for free, all yours for the taking." And I saw how happy the guy was since his head was popping up and down his seat. And I imagined how he tremendously enjoyed this treat. And as I looked out of the plane window at the clouds outside, somehow those scenes kept on replaying in my mind, and the words of the attendant kept on resonating. It's for free, all yours for the taking. Suddenly, I felt a warm embrace and a tug in my heart. I sensed as if God was whispering to me, "Hey, it's like my grace. It's for free, all yours for the taking." And I reflected on this for the rest of the flight. And as we disembarked from the plane, I saw the guy at the waiting area. I just couldn't help myself, so I went up to him. I thanked him, I shook his hand and gave him a side hug. I assumed that he and his companion were quite dumbfounded at my gesture. But, I just smiled and went on my way. I was so uplifted that God blessed me that day through this guy. Grace. God's grace. Free. All yours for the taking. Have you ever realized how great, wonderful, and amazing this gift is? Let's go deeper into it. Was there a time you felt you were an outsider or an outcast, like you did not belong, or maybe you were treated unfairly, looked down upon, or possibly there was guilt or shame that you've brought upon yourself because of something that you've done in the past, making you distance yourself from people and relationships?
Have I felt like I was an outsider? Without a doubt. I remember when the judge actually sentenced me to 21 months, the look on everybody's face and how shocked they were to see me go through that. I had the faith community really praying for me. And despite being sentenced to 23 months, I only did 6 months and some days. I qualified for day parole and full parole. But I found myself like getting proactive and trying to find work and become a member of society again. So what ended up happening was I started participating in young adult ministry, and I was referred by a friend, actually the person who sponsored me in RCA. So that's when I started like finding myself in young adult events and in their ministries, playing sports or going to discussion nights. But the worst part about it is like with the past that I had, and then I'm all of a sudden around people that had really good upbringings and really good educations, and for myself, like I didn't really have any of that. I really felt insecure and very out of place, and I felt like I really didn't belong, and I was kind of like out of my my comfort zone. Especially like you have to bear in mind, like I spent a number of years selling drugs and spent a couple of years like around other criminals, and people try to rehabilitate themselves. But for me to be trying to like pursue a community and pursue my spiritual life around people my age and try to journey in that way, it was a bit of a shock. I don't think I was really ready for it.
If this is the case, I have great news for you today. We'll find it out as we come at the side of a well where a Jewish man has come and sat more than 2,000 years ago. Let's look at this fascinating story. You've probably heard or read about this many, many times in your life. But let's look at it again with the hope of discovering new insights and meaning to its narrative. And I pray that God will reveal something to you today, something that you needed to hear, maybe an inspiring word, a reassuring message, a whisper to your heart, and a blessing to your soul. We find this story in the book of John, chapter 4. Here, we see Jesus who was traveling from Judea to Galilee and decided to make a pit stop in a town called Sychar. As they have been on the road for hours, they were all tired, thirsty, and hungry. And besides, it was midday. It was noontime, and the sun was extremely hot. So Jesus sat down by a well to rest. Then a Samaritan woman with a jar came to draw water, and Jesus asked her, "Will you give me a drink?" Let's pause a bit and look at this scene for a while. For many years, and perhaps for most like me, the initial meeting of Jesus and the Samaritan woman passes on as just a usual small talk between strangers, striking up a conversation. But if you look at it very closely, this was meant to show us something more about Jesus than something about the woman. In his humanity, Jesus, of course, experienced tiredness, hunger, and thirst. But think about this. Think about this very closely. This is Jesus, the image of the invisible God, the architect of the universe, the creator of everything, the great I am, the very author of all life, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, all powerful, omnipotent, almighty. This is Jesus in all his divine nature. Do you think he needs this water in the well? Does he need this water from the well? What do you think? Jesus does not need anything, as he is already all of what I already mentioned. So why did he ask for a drink? Jesus does not need anything. He did not need the water. He did not need the well. He needed nothing. But he wanted something. The Samaritan woman at the well that day wasn't looking for Jesus. But it seems that Jesus was looking for her, for he made the first move to connect. You know, in the midst of our busy and distracted selves, we become so engrossed with ourselves and the world. Have you ever thought that, like with the Samaritan woman, he is looking for you, that he thirsts for you? He asked, "Will you give me a drink?" Just look, he was asking a Samaritan woman, someone who by all indications was an outcast, someone with ill repute, looked down and rejected in her own town, an adulterer, a sinner, someone loaded with guilt and shame. And yet, Jesus asked her to refresh him with a drink. There was really nothing that that woman can offer that Jesus could not acquire. There was nothing he needed from her. But he wanted something. You know, in the same way, Jesus does not need anything from you and me today. But he wants something from us. He wants our worship. Jesus wants our hearts of worship. God does not really need our worship. But if we give our cup of worship for him to drink, an exchange happens. He gives his open acceptance of our worship from us. Worship coming from our finite and broken lives, and accepts it as is, where is. Just simply embracing wherever and whatever we are, and turns our finite situations into infinite living waters of wholeness, of mercy, of love, and of grace.
I knew I wasn't the only one, but it felt like it, and it was on a personal level. I didn't really want to talk too much. You know, I prayed a lot about it. Like, I knew God could deliver me from that feeling that I had, that I didn't feel like I was good enough, or I felt like I didn't belong. And God did deliver on that. God introduced certain people in my faith journey that were around my age, and they helped me, you know, through the process. And it came to a point where I became more confident in myself and who I was, and I didn't find myself comparing myself to anyone else in their journey. You know, I accepted myself for who I was and what I've done and what I've accomplished.
Let's digress a bit. Now, we see this woman drawing water at the well at the 6th hour, and that's noontime, extreme heat of the day. It was obvious that she was avoiding any contact with anyone. We knew also from the text that she has had 5 husbands and currently shacking up with her 6th. And during those times, such was considered adulterous, shunned by society, and shamefully considered damaged goods. And in the old law, if a woman was accused of committing adultery, she was brought before the tabernacle, before the priest. And the priest would then get some holy water, put it in a cup, kneel down, and scoop some dirt and dust from the tabernacle floor and sprinkle it into the holy water. Then he would force the cup to the woman's mouth and force her to drink the bitter cup of the curse. Now, if the woman was guilty of adultery, she would be barren and not bear a child for the rest of her life. And if she was not guilty, she would not suffer its consequences. Now, let's look at this. Who was this woman? Look at this very closely. The woman at the well was an adulterer 5 times over and on her 6th. And in the old law, she would have been brought to the high priest to be forced to drink this bitter cup. But in this case, in this story, Jesus was the high priest who looked at the adulterer and said, "Give me your drink." Are you hearing this? The woman at the well, the adulterer, deserved to drink the cup of bitter condemnation. But instead, Jesus said, "Give it to me. Give me your drink." You know, in the same breath, Jesus does not only want your worship, He is also asking for you to give Him your cup, your brokenness, your weakness, your lack, your inadequacy, your sins, your mistake, your curse. He's saying, you don't have to live with your guilt and your shame any longer. He took it upon Himself. And if you do remember, you know, on the cross at Calvary, Jesus said, "I thirst." You know, I'm thirsty. Actually, there was a sponge that was soaked in sour wine. You can see this in John 19, which the soldiers placed on a hyssop branch and placed it on His lips. Jesus drank. He drank that bitter cup of our curse. And after that, He said, "It's finished." Such is grace given to us, broken, sinful, undeserving. Grace. You know, I'd like to end this with a story. I read this from a best-selling book of a friend of mine, and I think he also lifted this up from the Chicken Soup series. I don't know if you're aware of those books before. But let me paraphrase it for you. You know, one day, Anel, a social worker, she received a call from an orphanage. "Could you find foster parents for a particular baby?" they asked. Anel visited the orphanage and saw a cute little baby standing on the crib. And the baby was smiling at her and she was smiling back. And as she knelt down to get a closer look at the child, that was when she discovered that the baby had no arms. You know, the person managing the orphanage asked Anel, do you think there will be parents who would want this child? Now, for the next several months, there were many couples that visited the orphanage looking for a child to adopt, but no one wanted baby Gavin. One day, Anel got a call from Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They said they wanted to adopt a child, so Anel paid them a visit. And then the couple said, well, we are not wealthy and don't have that much money, but we have so much love to share and give. So Anel asked, do you have any preferences? Mrs. Smith said, we want a boy so my husband can play basketball with him. He'll be good for the boy. And how long will it take before we can adopt a baby? Asked Mrs. Smith. And then Anel answered, probably, perhaps in a year. Then Mrs. Smith asked again, isn't there a baby we can adopt now? So Anel sighed and she opened her bag and pulled out a photo of baby Gavin and handed it to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, saying, he's an adorable child, she said, except that he has no arms. Now the couple looked at the photo for a long time. Then it was Mr. Smith who spoke first. What do you think? He asked his wife. His wife answered, football. She said, he can play football with you. Sports isn't really important, he said. No, it is. A boy needs to have a sport, said Mrs. Smith. And the couple just kept on talking and talking as if Anel was not around. Then finally, Anel interrupted. Do you want the baby? Mrs. Smith said, want? Want the baby? Anel, you don't understand. This baby is ours. So Anel brought Mr. and Mrs. Smith to the orphanage and presented baby Gavin to them. And when Mr. and Mrs. Smith saw him, they rushed to him and embraced their son into their arms. You know, many people I've met, they think and believe they're like baby Gavin. Do you feel lacking, inadequate, disabled, defective? That there's something not right with you? Friend, God sees you differently. Like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, He is saying, you're mine. You are my child. This is grace. Such is God's love for you and me. Meet grace. Receive grace. Embrace Jesus today. Let me pray for you, that your hearts may be lifted up to this gift of living water that can change your life forever. Lord, I pray for all those who are listening today, that your hand of salvation, that your hand of inspiration be with all of them. Uplift them, O God, and make it clear with your embrace that you are loving them to the fullest, despite the sinfulness, the brokenness, and we are made whole because we are taking in the living water that only you can provide. And this is our prayer to you, our Lord Jesus, in your mighty name. Amen. Be blessed. We'll see you again.
Cleanse me from my shame. upon my heart what should be done. I will worship you in surrender. You have changed my life forever. For here in you I found the answer. That you are all that matters. Jesus, there's no other. You're my living water. Lord, your power lives in me. Send me out for all to see. Let your love flow through me. Lord, your power lives in me. Send me out for all to see. Let your love flow through me. 'Cause nothing in this world could satisfy my thirst. You've seen me at my worst, but still you loved me first. Nothing in this world could satisfy my soul.